I'm Chris Metkiff. I'm a UD alumni, and I brought Alex Model with me. He's also a UD alumni. He graduated here last year. I graduated 9 years ago. I know I look like I'm your age, but I'm actually 30 years old. Have 2 children, a wife. One's 6 years old and one's 21 months old. So I may look like a baby, but I'm actually 30 years old, which is pretty wild. But 9 years ago, I was in your shoes in college. I was a math major here. There was only 35 of us as a math major. Originally I was computer science. I couldn't stand 6 hours of coding each night, so I decided math had the most parallel courses and the quickest way to graduate. So I took that major as an option, and I don't know how I got by, but it all worked out. Because on top of that, I played basketball here. So as you know, in Division I athletics, you're spending about 6 hours in the gym a day too. So math, 6 hours in the gym, very difficult, but it all worked out. So I was on the 4.5-year plan, like I heard some of us are here too. Alex played baseball here at Delaware. So we have a firm called Swarthmore Financial. So we are a wealth management firm here in Delaware. We have 30 advisors here in Delaware, and we have the biggest footprint here in the financial planning world. So I'm not here to talk about financial planning and bore you to death. I'm here to talk about other topics. Becca specifically talks about failure, success, and I guess struggles of an entrepreneur. And then other topics as well is more of the sales, because as you know, we'll dive into that in another topic, but talk about sales that we use in a process as we deal with clientele that's out of the norm. Because most people, when you think about sales as an entrepreneur, every salesperson is an entrepreneur, every entrepreneur is a salesperson, whether it's a sale of a concept, an idea, an app, or a business, you are selling things. It's all about relationships. So we'll highlight that as well, and then we'll wrap it up for questions and answers. But anything else that you guys wanted to make sure that we went over besides that? Sound like good topics as we eat? Yeah. Good? So, again, like I said, I'm 30. I've been in the business 9 years. Next year, July of 2016, I will be the president of our financial planning firm. So a guy that's 67 years old is retiring on his succession plan. And when I first got into business 9 years ago, Sean Keane was the succession plan. And as you know, the life of an entrepreneur, it's difficult. You have to deal with people. And he had more excitement dealing with his own practice and business, didn't want to really manage people or develop people. So I took that opportunity and started to lead and grow and recruit and develop people within our firm. This other guy, Anthony Spaticchia, came about, had a similar vision as myself. He was from Philadelphia though, and his mortai was in Philadelphia. So I guess one of the paths as an entrepreneur, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but it's a very difficult path. I always took advantage of opportunities that were there and always wanted to slingshot in there and be the person there. So I guess that's a long way of saying, hey, it doesn't matter how old you are, success does not discriminate from an age standpoint. So not many people that are 30 will own a firm of 30 people. By the end of the year, we'll be 35, have the biggest footprint in Delaware. So that's the biggest thing to share with you is it doesn't matter that you're 22, 24. As long as you have a vision, a dream, nothing will ever get in your way if you are laser focused on it and have good people around you to guide and mentor and coach you. So my goal one day, and the reason Alex is here is I think he's a stud. I think he's got a great vision of the future. And I see him as being somebody that succeeds me one day, right? So you always need to be able to pull people up as well as lead people throughout your career path. So one of my big jobs, I have clients, but one of my big jobs is to recruit and develop people at our agency and our firm. And one of the 5 things that we look for, and Alex will probably laugh, is we look for people that are entrepreneurial. So everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody says they can be an entrepreneur. I'm sure you guys are not the norm, and you guys actually are entrepreneurs since you're in the building. But most of your peers will take the path of least resistance. They will all work at JP Morgan. They will all work at Bank of America. They will all work at Capital One. They will all work for somebody. When I graduated college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Most of my peers became teachers, actuaries, statisticians, or something with numbers, right? That's the typical path of a math major. But I always knew I wanted to build a business or start a business. I didn't know what it would be. I had a grand old vision. I know it sounds kind of corny, but I wanted to start a recycling company where my parents lived in North Carolina because they didn't recycle down there. Fast forward 7 years later, they have recycling down there, curbside recycling. My vision, I sat down with the mayor, went to banks, all that good stuff, had it all lined up, but the mayor never stroked the check to make sure that there was resources to do that. But now obviously they do, and my dad sent me the article, and it actually happens down there. But I always knew I wanted to build a business, be in control, and not have anybody tell me yes or no, how much you can make, how many hours you work, how many days you have off. So I always had the entrepreneurial spirit in me. The problem is, and what we talk about in our firm, we call it greatness in the moment. So greatness in the moment is not when they're on the stage collecting the trophy, or when Tim Cook walks across the stage, or any of that. Greatness in the moment is, in our world, it's coming in on a Saturday morning when nobody else is there doing work. Or it's staying on a Monday night late making a phone call because you know that's what you have to do. It's doing the things that nobody else wants to do that you know that you have to do. That's what success and discipline is, doing the things that you know you have to do even when no one's looking. So again, I had my daughter when I was 24, before I was married, so again I did it the opposite. But on Saturday mornings I knew I had to be there, but I also had a stroller in my hand and a baby in my hand. I'd put her down and I'd make phone calls. Most people would not do that. That's why most people fail in our business. That's why most businesses fail. That's why most people are not entrepreneurs. That's why most people give up and have to work for somebody to get a paycheck, get the same paycheck every 2 weeks, and call it a day. It's a comfortable life, right? So most people won't get beyond that resistance and say, hey, I'm okay with the ebbs and flows of income because I know I'm focused on a vision and nobody's ever going to get in my way, because then I'll make $250,000, $500,000, and $1 million one day. But it's not all about the money, because nothing will ever drive you. Everything will drive you but money. Money just comes as an aspect of it, right? So you got to have a laser-focused vision and focus. So that's what I think of an entrepreneur, because when we interview people, the biggest thing that we look for are people that are entrepreneurial. And most people are not. Most people have to work for somebody to be told what to do. Leadership, I guess I want to touch on that. I know we're thinking about time too, but I put leaders always pull. It's tough to push a rope, right? So you got to pull a rope sometimes, and some people need to be led. So in our firm, we have 30 people right now. Every day they're failing, right? Which is a good thing. I always think about Michael Jordan said, hey, I failed over and over again. That's why I succeed. So this guy's top of his game. He fails every day. Obviously, he's obviously doing something right. But most business owners that are successful, they'll probably come in here and talk about all the failures. So it's not the greatness in the moment when they walk across the stage and they're Forbes 100 or whatever it may be. Sherm, right? He's the #1 entrepreneur in Delaware. He probably talked about all the times he failed. People smashed the door in his face, said no, and said his food stunk, right? But that's the reality, is you will fail, and you'll learn from those mistakes and hopefully continue on. I still make mistakes and learn from them and continue on and move forward. But leaders always pull. And a big thing my dad always shared with me, and it's kind of opposite of the whole tie thing. Well, number one, you always got to be with your market, right? So if I'm sitting down with a farmer client, I'm rolling up my sleeves, letting them know, hey, I can get dirty, right? So I'm in front of you guys, I want to let you know, hey, I can take my tie off and have a good time too. But my dad always shared with me, he said, you never know who's looking. Someone's always watching, right? So in my world, it's a little bit different, but I always wanted to be the best dressed person in the room. I always wanted to be the most presentable, because it's unfortunate, but there's a lot of superficialness out there, but especially in our business, especially in the financial advisory world. There's a connotation, there's an expectation of what you look like, unfortunately, and that's the reality. So I always wanted to make sure that I looked the best dressed role or part, because in our business, that's the reality. But he always said there's always somebody looking, right? So I'll never forget when UD played Duke. My dad and I flew down because we're big fans of Duke, and obviously they played in Delaware, so we're big fans. And I donated to Delaware Athletic Fund, so we were there with the administrators and all the UD supporters. And me being I guess I was 27 or 26-year-old then, I showed up in my jeans, I showed up with a sweatshirt, I looked like I was 19 still. but I'm sitting in front of the AD and president of the university, and we're all socializing and everything, but my dad pulled me aside. He said, why are you wearing holes in your jeans? He said, these are people that you want to be as clients. And it just clicked there, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. So now, fast forward, a lot of those people are clients of mine because I've been around that environment. So obviously they got past that. I looked like I was a 19-year-old, but still, someone's always looking. Can't tell you how many times I've gotten a client by just being around, out and about, whether it's my church or whether it's being part of an organization. I'm on a few boards. But people always ask. I've gotten stopped in parking lots. They always ask you, hey, what do you do? Are you an attorney or something? So you never know who's looking. That's the whole point of what I'm trying to relay, is you never know who's looking. You always want to be the part, act the part, whether to say something or the way your body language is. People are always looking, and that's important in many facets of life. That's something that my dad always shared with me. And the other thing I put down was success does not age discriminate. Mistakes and failures, people are always failing. You want to talk about it. I always joke with Alex is to throw up on my desk and talk about all the failures first. Because if you're not talking about that, if you're internalizing, number one, it's not good for your health. Number one, you're not going to learn from it and move forward and succeed. But always talk about success, always fail, because things will result and come out of that. But any questions on that before I dive into the meat of the presentation? Jordan?
How has the company really fostered the idea of allowing failure? In a lot of other companies, failure is punished. I mean, if you fail, you might get fired. But it sounds like at Swarthmore, they openly hope for failure because you learn from that. So how they really fostered that idea?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess the big thing, we talk about it often, and it's the reality. I know it's human beings are very predictable. We're a predictable species, especially when you deal with a larger pool of people. So we know, and when I get 2 referrals, one becomes a client. It's just the reality of the business. So we talk a lot about that. Hey, one person's going to say no, and that's fine. We know that. Whether it's a timing issue, or they don't really know what you do, or how you do it, or you just caught them in a bad day, or they got that latest credit card statement and they can't afford it, right? So we know people say no, but you got to run towards that.
I have a couple questions, but when you were at the career fair and boss, did you say Tim Cook?
No, that's the guy that runs Apple, right? But no, Chuck Path was the president of the firm.
Chuck Path, okay. He approached you and he asked what you wanted to do after you graduated, and I believe before you said that, you said you weren't sure what you were going to do. What did you say to him?
I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
I said, I didn't know. And then he pulled me aside and he said, hey, I'm not sure if our 2 worlds fit, but let's get together and have a conversation. And then I learned more about the business, and then it evolved from there.
And is Swarthmore a Securian financial institution?
Securian, that's not our broker-dealer.
No?
No, that's Diamond State you're thinking of.
Okay. Who is...
Our broker-dealer is Mass Mutual Financial Group.
Thank you.
Of course.
So you touched briefly on mentors, and you talked about Chuck, and you talked about your dad, and you have Alex here. So I was just wondering, could you elaborate on why that was important in your success path? You know, having a mentor of your own and then mentoring other people that are not, at your level yet.
Yeah, the important thing is you always have somebody to look up to, just like your parents, right? I'm sure somebody was influential in your life, whether it was your parents, an aunt, uncle, cousin, neighbor that you looked up to. And Chuck, to me, was a true leader. You know, I always joke with my dad and him that he's like my second dad, because he'll do anything and everything for me. Same thing for Alex, he'll do anything for him to make sure that he succeeds. And that's the biggest thing, is I always looked up to him, I always had respect for him, and there's a mutual respect there. And anybody needs that. And any person running a business always has a business coach. Tiger Woods is one of the best golfers. He has a golf coach, right? He's a swing coach. Can you believe that? Tiger Woods having a golf coach? Michael Jordan, when he was a basketball player, had a shooting coach. So everybody has somebody they look up to, guide, and some kind of coach or mentor in their path. And then they, in return, hopefully bring people up and guide and mentor them too, to pass that off.
In the first couple of years, I hear it's not uncommon for people in a firm like yours to spend 60 hours a week working. What was your motivation then if there wasn't a lot of positive coming out of it as some like bumps in the road?
Yeah, there was always positives, but it was more negatives going on.
Right.
So I just always cleared that out. My wife says I'm an eternal optimist, and she's a realist, so we kind of balance each other out. But yeah, and sometimes I lie to myself and say things are a lot better than they are. But that's just the way my mindset works. I try to discount the failures and the bad things going on and keep more of the positive things. But the big thing was, we talk a lot about it too, how long do you want to elongate the pain, right? Do you want to elongate it forever, or do you want to make sure it's a short pain? And are you going to work hard in a short period of time? Or are you going to work fairly hard over 2-3 years and elongate the pain? So how long do you want to elongate that pain is the biggest thing. And I realized, I was joking with Alex, there was a firm here and on Main Street. I came from New York. In the financial planning world, you have to really know a lot of people. I didn't know a lot of people here. So I'd be knocking on doors, businesses, left and right, just to meet anybody and everybody, just to make it work. So in that point, I looked forward. I had nobody on my calendar for 2 weeks. So I realized, hey, either this is not going to work out or I'm going to make this thing work out. I said, I'm going to put my money on myself. So what I did, I started picking up the phone and calling professors here. So now we have a team of 3 advisors. We do fee-based planning for professors here. We have a DBA called University Advisory Professional Group, and a big chunk of our clientele are professors here, all because I picked up the phone one day. There was a directory on the website. I knew the names that associated with the phone number and just made it work. And then calendar got filled and I started to build referrals from there. But I got in that Wim junction where most people will give up. I said, hey, no, I'm going to make this thing work. Racked up credit card debt, all that stuff, just to make it work. And a lot of entrepreneurs get in debt. They deal with money with their parents because they know and they got that laser focus to make sure it all works out. So you will do nothing to fail. That's the big mindset.
Thank you.
Jordan?
So it sounds like you had, like, even though there might have been a lot of bumps in the road, that you were fairly confident that all you really had to do was you kept at it, you kept working hard, that it was going to work out. As like, correct me if I'm wrong, was there a point throughout that where your confidence started to waver, or you needed like maybe your mentor or someone else to really help you refocus or anything?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, he could read it on my face sometimes, and as a good mentor, you'll hopefully know when a person's doing well or not, and they'll pull you aside and say, hey Chris, what's up? And most people will lie and be like, oh, nothing. But then they ask you a second time, hey, what's up, what's wrong? Then you lie again. Usually after the third time, you start throwing up, crying, and let you know that's reality. And that's the reality of anybody. If you ask them a question one time, they usually breeze it off, but after 3 times or so, they'll really give the real thing that's going on. So they're just having a real conversation with you and say, hey, what's going on? And once you share it and throw up on somebody, you feel a lot better and then move on. Anything else before I move on to the other stuff? Jordan?
I would like to ask a question.
No, you're good.
So, how was your work balance, like your work-life balance? Because I mean, like, obviously as an entrepreneur, someone an entrepreneur, I said you will have to put a lot of time in on your business, but I'm sure you couldn't do just 100 hours of business. You still have to have your own business.
I love sleeping. It's difficult to do 100 hours in a week. I need my 8 hours or else I can't function. But yeah, to be honest, it's a challenge now. It's been a challenge forever, and I love to find a person that has the perfect work-life balance. But I'm fortunate enough that my wife stays home with the kids. She takes care of the home. She's the CEO of her home. And she balances a lot and she takes a lot, but she's focused on the vision too, of what the future looks like. So Alex jokes about it all the time. He's like, man, how long do I have to stay out late and have meetings? But the reality is that there's a growth phase. So when I first grew my business, I'd see anybody, anywhere, anytime, on Sundays, Saturdays, 7 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock in the morning. But then over time, you realize, hey, I can't do that. So then you start to scale back. Hey, my last meeting's at 6:30. Then you hire an assistant, start delegating, using some of the resources, delegate. And then you say, hey, I don't work on weekends. And then you say, hey, my last meeting's at 4:30. So you start to tailor that. But then, as I started getting more into the management and developing, I realized, hey, I got to be out at 8 o'clock at night with this guy to make sure that he's successful too. So the big thing is support at home, whether it's a mom, dad, or a aunt, uncle, or a girlfriend, boyfriend, sister, whatever it may be, having that support at home because they're as focused in the vision as you are.
I wanted to add one thing to your question earlier about the failure part, where you're saying basically failure is frowned upon. But one of the most important things that I've heard just thus far in this industry is basically, if you aren't failing, you aren't growing. Everybody's sitting here, you're gonna fail, but that's when you learn. And if you're not failing, you're not getting yourself out there either, to grow whatever it is that you want to be growing.
That's good. Anything else before we move on? Good? All right. So, quick story. Anybody ever heard of Bath Fitter? It's a company that comes and makes your bathroom look good. So I had a house, and I still have it, but my goal has always been to turn it into a rental. So it's a mediocre house. It's in Charlie Square, young professional area. The goal is to have the house, live in it in a few years, rent it out, call it an investment. So the bathroom was not working one day, and I said, okay, let me call Bath Fitter in to see if I should patch it up or just redo the bathroom and make it look okay. I didn't care really what it looked like. It all came down to budget. Whatever costs less, get it done as long as it works, because I'm going to rent this thing out. So Bath Fitter came in my house for 3 hours. My whole intent, though, was cost. It took him 3 hours to figure that out. So most salespeople, as did he came in, he had his little booties on his feet, he had this huge binder that looked like it was thrown in the trash 10 times and dragged behind his car for 4 weeks, and then talked about features and benefits. So we were on 2 different wavelengths, which is typical of any sales guy, gal, company, business, or anything, right? So in our world, and we've, it translates to anything in life. That's why I get so excited about it. Hopefully you can see red better than blue. But we call it Standler Sales. It's an international sales organization, but we have bought into it 100%. And every client, any engagement we work with, any relationship we have in, outside of work, whatever it may be, is this whole process. So step 1 of this process, bonding rapport, right? People do business with people that they like, respect, and want to do business with. So bonding rapport is key. That always goes on in the meeting. Always, 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 always. I don't care who you are. Then we all have an upfront contract. It's not a legal document, but it's an agreement. I'm going to dive deep into a few of these. I can't get through all of them just for the time. Developing pain with the client, understanding what their budget is, what the decision step is, how we fulfill their needs and wants, desires, and then a post-sale. So that's the same process every time with every client, every relationship, every engagement. I practice on my wife at home, and she always tells me to stop. But every time it's the same process, right? So people, number 1, buying to us, and number 2, they're buying to the process, and number 3, they buy our product. The third thing is the product, right? The products don't matter. All they know and want to know is that we care and that we're there for them. And that's why they're choosing us in our process. Products, just a third part of that. So I'll dive into upfront contract, post-sale, and decision step just because of time. But the thing I want to highlight on bond rapport is as technology grows and increases, it kind of limits us. And as you'll hear in our world, these top producers, they always pick up the phone, have that real dialogue, right? So if you're face-to-face with a client, and then you're on the phone, and then you have email, right? And then you have body language, your tonality, right? Rate of speech, how loud you are, how fast you speak, and then the words you say. So many people in our business, many people in sales, always get caught up in the words they say. They raise their hand, hey Chris, I don't know what to say. Chris, I don't know what I want to say, right? When you think about body language, how you're presenting, how you're moving with somebody, all that good stuff, tonality and words you say, if you were to put a percentage on a face-to-face meeting of the importance, what would you weight that as? Body language, tonality, and words. What would you put on the weighting of importance? What do you think?
Well, I mean, 60% for body
You probably
language.
can't see it from that angle. But 65% where?
60% for body language.
60 here. Where else?
2020.
2020. Good answer. Anybody else want to challenge that, Jordan?
I think it's like 90% body language, 6% tonality, 4% words.
Okay. So I'm going to shock you all here. So face-to-face, the words we say are only 7%, tonality is 38%, body language 55%. So in our world, in sales, 98% of our business is psychology. Right? So I'll never forget one of my first meetings with Sean Keenan in our office. He's sitting with the client like this. But then I look at the client, and he's sitting like that too. But they were bonding, right? They're all sitting the same way, right? They're all like intent, looking at each other, and I'm sitting there like, oh my goodness, is this guy going to ruin this meeting? But I realized that they were mirroring each other. That's part of the body language. So most people, young, go to the bar, today's what, Friday, right? Yeah, so some of you guys might go to the local watering hole tonight. But most of the guys are terrible at this, but they'll stand exactly like Alex is. His feet are facing that way, and he's not communicating with me fully. His hands are in his pockets, right? We're talking. Right? Same thing. But now I'm engaged, right? I'm full there. I'm focused on him, right? That's part of body language. If the client sits back or somebody sits back and they're relaxed and you're all uptight and everything, you're probably not communicating too well. So body language is huge. If I'm sitting in front of a client and his spouse is sitting there the whole time like this, clearly she's not A, engaged, or B, interested, or doesn't know what the hell I'm saying, right? So I got to be conscious of that and realize, okay, what's the body language going on here? Tonality, over the word, 38% of tonality. It's how you talk, how you reflect the words you say, your rate of speech, your inflections, all that good stuff. So everybody in our business and any sales always gets caught up in, hey, what do I say, what do I say, what do I say? But it doesn't matter. So now we go to the phone. How would we weight that? If I'm on the phone trying to schedule a meeting with somebody, because you are entrepreneurs, you're going to call somebody to set some kind of meeting, right? I guarantee you will. How would you weight that?
I'd say 80% tonality and 20% words.
We don't have body language, right? So 80-20. What else? Anybody else have a challenge to that? Ben?
I was going to say
You
so.
go with that? So yeah, you guys are right on target. It's 84%, and then 16 is the word. So obviously, your tonality is the most important thing there. What about if we go to email or text? What does it go down to? 100% of the words, right? Can't tell you how many fights I've had with my wife over texts. Because I don't know what she's saying. It's just the words, right? Could be all well-intentioned, but it doesn't work out, right? So when I get behind LinkedIn, Facebook, email, text, I got to remind myself, hey, pick up the phone, have a conversation. Because it's very difficult to understand what's going on. So bonding rapport always happens with anybody, anywhere, but just be conscious. Hey, you're in an interview, you're in a date tonight, whatever it may be. Always be conscious of your tonality, body language, and stuff like that. The other thing, upfront contract. Everything we do is mutually beneficial, right? We're not order takers. If a client calls and says, hey, I need to move my money, great, let's sit down and have a conversation. It's not, hey, I can get this rate of return to this. If they call and say, hey, I need to do my life insurance, send me a quote, the answer is no. Hey, let's sit down and have a conversation. Because it's not mutually beneficial. I'm not an order taker. Let's sit down, have a mutually beneficial relationship, and let's really uncover what you actually need and want. Right? I'm not Fidelity at 800 number. So upfront contract with the client. Time, their role, my role, outcome, right? We've all been in situations where you expect one thing, the other person expects another thing. You guys are on two separate pages all the time. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a sales engagement, right? So for me and the bath fitter guy, it was, hey, I was there for the price, and he's up here and I'm down here, right? Two different wavelengths. Waste of time, waste of everything. So an upfront contract is a conversation with the client of what's their role, my role, what's the outcome. Let's make sure it's mutually beneficial. So in our world, the only thing I can relate it to is my world, but in our world on the phone, it may sound like this. Hey, great, we're scheduled for Thursday at 4 o'clock. At our first meeting, it typically takes an hour, hour and a half. Is that still okay for you on Thursday at 4? Okay, good. So naturally, we call it the knot, just so we can remember it. I actually flipped them, so bear with me here. Naturally, from where you sit, you want to learn more about what I do, how I do it, why clients engage with me. Obviously, from where I sit, I'd like to learn more about what you do financially, what struggles you may have, what kind of goals you have, and what you've done so far to help hit those. And typically, one of two things happens at the end of that meeting. Either A, we get along, we have a great conversation, we continue the process and move forward and schedule another meeting. Or B, we realize after that meeting, it's not a good fit and we part friends. Either way is fine. Sound fair? So the pressure's off. Hey, I got an out. If we don't agree and match up, we could part friends. So most people get so nervous, they think it's a strong arm noogie hold and say, hey, you got to buy, and use me. But hey, no, if it doesn't work out, we could part friends. So they know that going in. It's an upfront contract. When we sit down, hey, from where you sit, how much time do you guys allocate for the day? Still an hour, hour and a half good? Okay, boom, we got time on the picture. Because you'll be in a meeting where they realize, oh, my husband's calling, I have to pick up the kids. Or, hey, I didn't realize I got to pick up my daughter or dog in 20 minutes, right? So that's not going to work. It's not a level playing field where I know I need an hour and a half. It's not going to work. So pack up and reschedule. So we always bring up time up front. Like we talked about on the phone, Jim and Susie, from where you guys sit and really dive into where you are financially, what goals you may have, and you repeat it. Every engagement, always an upfront contract. They know what to expect, they know what the next step is, they know what their role is, they know what my role is, every time. It's not, we call mutual mystification. We're all on the same page. So again, you could use this in an interview, a date tonight, you could use this in a job interview or a sales pitch for your latest app or business, right? Every time, outcome. Because you'll be in a situation where you're going through this meeting, an hour goes by, and you're like, okay, what the hell's the next step? Or you'll be in a meeting and you're driving home and you realize, hey, does that client know what to expect next? If I were to call that client, can they tell me what the next step looks like? That's always a good test. Does that person, after I met them, know what the next step is? So you always want to talk about an upfront contract. Pain, I don't have time to really go through that, but pain is understanding what their needs, wants, desires are. And that bath fitter example is, hey, my pain was budget. What's the cost, right? Budget, understanding, hey, is the client willing and able to move forward in your process? You will sit down with and you will learn from our scars on our back that there's a lot of people out there that aren't qualified to move forward in the process. Whether financially, or there's another decision maker, or some other reason, but you have to make sure that they're willing and able to fix the issues, willing and able and have the money to move forward in your process. Always got to talk about money. Decision step is key. In our world, or related to our world, I guess I'll relate to your world first, as you're an entrepreneur and you probably have businesses that you're working on. As you get in front of decision makers, there's probably 40 other decision makers behind them. Right? The HR director doesn't make all the decisions, it's probably the CEO or the board of directors. Or it's not the vice president, it's probably the president. So there's always somebody behind them that helps them with the decision or is actually making the decision. So we always talk about that. Great, so from where you guys sit, next meeting we get back together, have all the ideas and recommendations, what do we do next? And they'll probably say, hey, I got to run it by my accountant. Or they'll say, hey, no, we'll move forward. Or hey, we'll talk to my CPA or attorney. But at least we know what the decision-making steps or processes are. Because everybody in this room has a different decision-making process. I'll walk into Best Buy today and buy a TV. Some people will go on Google, some people will go to 4 different stores before they buy the TV, but everybody has a different process. So you got to understand, okay, how does that person move forward in the decision-making process? When they bought that car, did they stop by 4 dealers, or did they go on the spot and buy it and they knew the price that they wanted? So you got to understand that in any setting, what their process or decision-making process is. In our world, older people, 60s, 70s, always have their kids in the conversation. Because their financial world will greatly impact the kids and vice versa. Young 20, 30 years old, always have the parents involved in the conversation. Because they guarantee you they're calling daddy the next day and saying, hey, is this what I should do? So sometimes we realize, because we're mature enough to see, okay, who else do we know is in their process? And we have those always included when we meet. Fulfillment, in our world, that's where we write business. It's just the fulfillment of all their needs, wants, desires. But if you realize, I'm not presenting solutions until all this other step has happened. Right? So again, that bath fitter guy, he started presenting solutions before I was ever qualified. So you got to make sure every step is done before you ever present Numbers, figures, proposals, all that good stuff. Because the numbers don't sell things. It's the emotional connection, right? It's me in a financial planning world is making sure they don't outlive their money. That's an emotional connection. It's not a dollar sign that solves that. It's me making sure that if that spouse dies, that the family's still okay financially. It's me making sure that when they do invest, that their belly doesn't churn when the market goes down. So I got to understand all that before we ever go to solutions and recommendations. Same thing in your world, you can relate to anything. Understand all those steps before you present. And then the post-sale, anybody ever buy something or move forward on something, have a buyer's remorse the next day? Right? Everybody. People like, how many things I bought? And I'm like, holy shit, why the hell did I buy that? Right? So the post-sale is really saying, hey, we're going to have that conversation today while I'm in front of you of all the reasons of why you might second guess that tomorrow. People that come into play that just destroy what happened are accountants in our world, attorneys, right? Because they come in with a different perspective. That's why the reality is we have those people involved in our conversations and decision step. But also the worst conversation for someone in our world is the water cooler, right? They're at work the next day at CSC or Capital One, and they have no clue about anything about the financial world, but they're having a conversation around the water cooler, and like, hey, why the hell are you doing that? I do it this way. You should be doing it that way. And then all of a sudden they get all this head trash, right? So post-sale, something like this, what I always say with a couple is, hey, what do you guys do before you go to bed? Do you guys read books or do you guys watch TV? I know it's like, what the hell are you asking me that for? But they're like, oh, we read books. Okay, great, so you're reading a book tonight. Sally, when you go home and you're reading the book and you turn to your husband Jack and say, hey, why did we do X, Y, and Z? What are you going to say? And hopefully they tell me every reason why they did it. And I'll flip it back. Okay, Jack, whatever his name was, you look at Susie and say, hey, why did we do blank, blank, and blank? Why are we using Chris? And she hopefully tells me every reason why. And I say, great, what else? Great, what else? Great, so when I get a call tomorrow and you say, hey, blank, blank, and blank told me not to do this at the water cooler, what should I tell you? No, that's not going to happen because I realize our situation's different, right? So I want the bomb to explode in front of me before it does behind the scenes because I don't want to email the next day. I don't want a phone call saying, hey, Chris, I thought about things and Johnny, the janitor, said not to do it. So the post-sale is probably crucial in any sales organization because every salesperson has gotten that email, that phone call the next day and said, hey, cancel it, it's off. But if you have that conversation in front of a client, you're in a good environment, a neutral environment, you're just having a conversation and they're selling you about why they're using you. It's not you telling them every reason, they're telling me why they're going to work with me. Make sense? Because the reality is when they call Fidelity, that advisor is going to call them every day until they speak and say every reason why they should not move that money. So I got to prepare them. Great, so when the guy from Fidelity or Diamond State calls you tomorrow and says, hey, every reason why you shouldn't move that money, what are you going to say? I got to prepare them for that conversation. So this process and steps, hopefully, it'll help you in any aspect of your life, world, interview, job, and proposal as you guys present to other companies, board of directors, and stuff like that. It's helped us exponentially. We don't get the think it overs anymore, and we don't get the, hey, I'll get back to you, because everything we do is mutually beneficial with the client. Everything. Everything you deal with in life should be mutually beneficial. There's no one-way streets here, right? It's a two-way street. And that's why you have and build relationships with people, because you enjoy being with them and vice versa. And it's been exponential in our life, in our world, in our business, and hopefully you guys get some value out of that too. What questions do you have on that process?
What was that called again? The model? Where did you guys get that from?
It's an international company called Sandler. So it's a sales process.
Okay.
There's many sales processes out there, but it's called Sandler Selling Systems. Jordan?
So when you say like the bad fitter, especially in your situation, you were pretty much just focused on budget and trying to just get the lowest thing possible. Then would the person the guy who was selling it to you pretty much blown through those first 2 points, like the whole bond report and front contract, and that would have just been a real quick thing, just to understand what you're paying for, because you wouldn't have needed all that time to talk as long as that person could show you, hey, look, this is cheaper than that. Just get our system, like it would have been a lot shorter of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, God gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? So he didn't listen, he just talked the whole time. Talked about features and benefits. Most people buy things for emotional reasons, justify intellectually. So he was touching on all the intellectual things, which he wasn't grabbing my gut and getting all the emotional things and listening.
If a client wants to jump straight to the fulfillment step and skip all the bonding, how do you interject and say, hey, let's go back and do this?
Like I shared with you on the phone, our philosophies may not match up. And we may have to part friends, which is fine. So this is my process that I know works and is successful. So you may not have that same philosophy and it may not be the right guy. That's okay.
Okay.
So I'll let them know. And either A, they respect it, or maybe they're just not a good person and we may part. That's fine. Because I know in 2 years it'll probably be a pain in the neck anyway, and it's not mutually beneficial.
Thank you.
So you have to learn how to say no, I guess, to some people.
One more question. I know people got class.
Okay. You're the lucky guy. One more question.
Thank you. Have you ever gone through the post-sale with a client and still, after the fact, came up with an issue, like of them like kind of feeling cold feet or wanting to back out?
Yes, either one of two things happen there. Either A, I didn't build enough interest in why they need it, or B, I didn't educate them about all the reasons why. So it's either interest or the education of why. So I'll ask them, be like, hey, from where I sit, it sounds like it may not be of interest, or it's just a matter of understanding why you need it, which is the case for you. But then I know. It's called a split reverse. He's laughing because this is what we go over every week. But then I know which path to go down. Is it interest? Do I have to help them understand of why they need it? Or do they really not know how it works through education? So really, Chris, I want to learn more how it works and the features and benefits and everything. Okay, good. So go down that path of features and benefits to educate. And then I'll stick in there, just like that turkey at Thanksgiving, a little thermometer. And I'll say, great, so where I'm trying to rush now. From where you sit on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 this being a great fit, 0, why do we keep talking about it? Right. If they say 8, 9, or 10, they're probably on board and get it. If they say below that, obviously they have a lot of education here. So you want to see where they are. Education or interest. Good?